We like to say that journalism is not a crime, but in Palestine, it is. So a group of Canadian journalists have decided we have a responsibility to stand with our colleagues, even if our newsrooms, unions, and press freedom organizations won't. We're done staying silent about Israel's targeting of our colleagues and of our media's complicity in this genocide. And we're doing something about it. Introducing Canadian Journalists for Justice in Palestine. I am proud to share that yesterday I joined this initiative. And I'm late to the game. I only heard about this because it just went public. It was founded and has been spearheaded by several incredible journalists, many of them journalists of color. Sharon Nadeem, Samira Mohyeddin, Arkell, Newman and Inori Roy. And that's not to mention the folks behind the scenes. And this week, they spoke out in their first press conference. Samira Mohyeddin read the words of our colleague Hassam Shabbat, who Israel killed on March 24th. He had a statement prepared for after his death, because this is how Israel treats Palestinian journalists. Here is an excerpt of his words read by Samira.
I endured hunger for months, yet I never left my people's side. By God, I fulfilled my duty as a journalist. I risked everything to report the truth, and now I am finally at rest.
Honestly, the founding members of our organization shouldn't have had to start it. There are several press freedom organizations in Canada, unions and newsrooms that should be the ones using their voices. But instead, many of those groups have opted for deafening silence. Speaking personally, I can tell you there is a serious issue with flagrant cowardice from many Canadian media institutions. I remember last year I attended a press freedom luncheon. The room was like a who's who of Canadian journalism. There were so many big names there, and honestly, I was a little intimidated to be in that room. And at this event, months into a genocide where Israel had killed many Palestinian journalists, no one mentioned these journalists in Gaza. During the entire luncheon, not one person got up on that stage and said anything significant about the journalists in Gaza, despite having lots to say, rightfully, about repression elsewhere. I wonder if any of that had anything to do with the fact that one of the board members of this press freedom organization, the one that organized the luncheon, he's now the VP of Communications for Canada's largest and most vocal pro-Israel lobby group. And it's literally in his bio on the Press Freedom Org's website that he previously was Director of Communications for the Embassy of Israel in Canada. Now, since October 8th, 2023, 185 journalists and media workers have been killed in Gaza, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists. That figure alone would already make this the deadliest period for journalists on record. But the Palestinian Journalist Syndicate puts that number even higher at 226. This is where I'd like to read you a part of the statement from Canadian Journalists for Justice in Palestine. Quote, "Journalists serve as indispensable witnesses, documenting realities that powerful actors frequently seek to obscure. International law clearly establishes that journalists and media workers are civilians who must be protected during armed conflicts. Yet the targeting of Palestinian journalists and their families in Gaza persists, largely unchallenged and inadequately covered by Western mainstream media, which often views Palestinian journalists as biased or partial. Israel has also barred international media from entering Gaza, forcing Palestinian journalists to work with a target on their back while reporting on the genocide of their people. The impunity of the Israeli state and its willingness to use state violence to silence Palestinian voices continues. The government's refusal to guarantee journalists' safety, coupled with repeated communication blackouts, are not mere obstacles. They constitute deliberate and strategic acts of censorship. And that didn't start on October 7th. Consider Shireen Abu Akleh, a Palestinian-American journalist who was killed by the IDF while reporting on an Israeli raid in the West Bank. That was in 2022, when I interviewed 4 journalists who knew her, including the cameraman who filmed her murder. My newsroom refused to run the story. Meanwhile, Israel continues its pattern of attacking and murdering journalists, which, as the CJJP says, quote, only serves to silence the truth of the country's genocidal actions against the rest of the civilian population in all of Palestine. There is a need and responsibility for the journalists in Canada and around the world to stand up against the targeted killing of our colleagues. So here is what we're doing, in the words of our founding members. Quote, "We are launching Canadian Journalists for Justice in Palestine, an organization through which we hope to unite the journalists concerned about the slanted coverage of Israel's war on Gaza and those who want to stand in solidarity with our Palestinian peers experiencing violence, siege, and censorship." For the last 20 months, we have seen a consistent failure among Canadian media institutions to uphold strong reporting standards when it comes to Israel-Palestine. We have seen journalists ostracized, silenced, and penalized for raising concerns within their newsrooms. Many have experienced grave moral injury, seeing the employers and newsrooms they once trusted now compromise standards that would otherwise be considered sacrosanct. Our call to action today is urgent and clear. We demand that newsrooms and our fellow journalists, particularly those with powerful platforms and privileged positions, fulfill their fundamental responsibility to hold Israel to account fearlessly and relentlessly. Journalists must report fully and accurately on the targeted assassinations of their colleagues, demand accountability from governments and institutions responsible for violating international law, and refuse complicity through silence, bias, or misleading surface-level reporting. Each time a journalist is killed, the world loses a vital voice, and another barrier is erected between the public and the truth. Today, we remind ourselves and our peers across the country of our ethical and professional duties to report courageously, to challenge power unequivocally, and to fiercely protect the integrity of our profession and the safety of our colleagues. The world is watching, and history will remember how we respond. I want to leave you with a message from Inori Roy to our colleagues in the industry.
Who are barred from being here because they'd be considered biased and they wouldn't be allowed to do their jobs by their editors and managers. I say, we're with you. We will speak for you when you can't speak for yourself. And we will work alongside you to make this industry as hospitable to Palestinian Canadian journalists as possible. To the journalists who aren't here because they don't think it's worth paying attention to, they think local issues are more important and Palestinian issues don't matter, I would remind them that an offense to journalism in one part of the world is an offense to journalism everywhere. And if they don't allow Palestinian journalists to do their jobs, they will not allow us to do our jobs eventually.
Thank you so much for listening. What do you think of all this?